do. So like, what does it do? It's an 8-track. You're able to. These are the old cassettes that you.
These are 8 tracks.
Oh, those. Okay, yeah. See, I've never messed with 8-track.
They are terrible.
So this was the predecessor of like the regular cassette tape.
Yes.
That was in between vinyl.
So it went vinyl, 8-track, and then very shortly after, it went to cassette.
Yeah.
8-tracks did not last that long, and they were awful. And if you, I mean, it was music that you got to take with you, right? But if you put the 8-track in, and basically you've got 4 tracks, then you can flip it over and there's 4 more. But it could be, there was only so much time on each track, and at a certain point it could be the middle of a song. It'll just fade out, and then you hear cha-chunk, and then they'll fade back in and continue playing the song.
Oh, okay.
And so it was didn't last long. It was a great step in the right direction.
It was a really quick intermediate step, wasn't it?
Yep.
Yeah, what was it, 70s?
70s, yep.
Okay. And what's under the hood here?
So you got your stereo, this is your radio, and then your record player.
For the treble bounce.
You don't have volume, you only have loudness,
yeah.
which is great.
I love
and then,
it.
you can put in extra speakers. So I had main and remote speakers that I wired in.
Oh, cool.
And then you've got 2
for radio
12-inch speakers in the cab.
Yeah.
So the doors don't actually open, and that's what actually tipped me off when I was at the Goodwill, is that the doors don't actually open, and then your tweed back here is actually your speaker case.
This is exactly what my organ looks like. This I'm gonna I think it's like the same fabric. I got like a 70s con organ.
Yeah, I'm sure it was on sale.
Yeah, it was $50. Yeah.
I was saying, is yours a Zenith?
It was a con organ.
Con?
Con, C-O-N-N is like a.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I don't know how popular they are, but. Oh yeah, this is Zenith.
Zenith was good stuff. But I think in general, I mean, as far as these went, I don't know how much they were really sought after. A lot of people had.
You got this at Goodwill?
Yeah, this was $30 at Goodwill, and
That's pretty cool.
Came with all the 8-tracks and.
It's nice, the vinyl and the 8-track, you know.
Yeah, and then your vinyl storage right in here.
This thing's pretty cool. That's awesome. I would love that in my home, you know. That's cool.
And the nice ones, actually, they were bigger, and I'd always wanted to get. They were bigger, and then there was also a wet bar.
Yeah.
Also, a wet bar?
Yeah. So you had your speakers on both sides, then you had your liquor cabinet in the center. Yeah. And then you'd open up the top, and you'd open up one side, there'd be a cooler.
It's a whole
you could even you could raise this thing out of there and have like glasses in it. Oh, and then you'd have all your music on the other side.
That's sick. That's cool.
This is an action.
I'm sure.
Okay, tell me about bikes and why they're so cool.
Alright, just first one dude, I was right back. That's everything you need to know. Are you actually going to come
Should we turn it around?
I mean,
I got no brakes.
No brakes, I guess.
Yeah, do you want to have no brakes going forward or backward?
No, you just hold on to the hoop. I'm not going to sit on it. You just hold on to it. What are you doing? No.
I was going to lift it up and turn it around.
No.
Okay. First of all, what are you doing? Hold on.
I can help if you want.
No, just hold the camera.
Yeah.
There you go.
This counterpaint caught my pants, and this is what I get for trying to wear cool boots with no tread.
Okay, so
All right.
this is yours, Matt?
Yeah, I like it best without a seat because then you warm your butt up while you ride through it.
Well, you gotta stand.
How many motorcycles do you have?
I have 8 motorcycles now. 4 of which are parts bikes. Mostly duplicates of things that I like because everything I have is from the 70s. So it's cheaper for me to buy an entire second motorcycle than for me to hunt down individual pieces on eBay. And I got this one on a trade for a bike so rare. If you Googled it, Google tried to correct you. And then when I realized that one was broken for this, he'd already started a cafe project. Yeah, and if you can't tell, this is the beginning of the project. So you've got new electronics with old, and the motor runs. I've gotten the motor to run, but because of this hoop, so this is a cafe style, and usually what you'll do is you'll put a small low profile seat on here, you'll put a smaller tank and some downswept bars, and basically it was in the 70s the way they made race bikes. But because I'm only doing off-road with it and going a different direction, getting a second frame, and then I'm gonna give this one to Matt, and he's got an engine for it already, and we're gonna get this one going. And you're doing dual purpose, right? Yeah.
Basically just commuting.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's right. Just a commuter.
Yeah.
But yeah,
with
no,
one
it'd be
this
great
big.
for that. I mean, and this was Kawasaki, 1976 Kawasaki KZ400. This was their competition to...
I'm assuming made in Japan, right?
Correct. And this was competition for Honda's CB350 or CB360, which was, I believe, one of the most best-selling bikes of the 70s.
Oh, cool.
So Kawasaki,
So it's not as known, but it's still a pretty solid bike.
it's definitely, yeah, it's pretty well known, but yeah, for the time, this was them trying to combat it with just slightly bigger displacement.
Cool.
And the way they advertised
Wait,
it,
displacement? What's that?
the size of the engine, the cc.
Okay.
So this is 400 cc, probably not exactly that, but then Honda's was a 350 or a 360. So this having a slightly higher number, it's easier to appeal to the American masses. Because at the time, when Honda first started...
What does higher number mean again? I'm thinking Mario Kart. Isn't like 150 cc? Isn't the lower the harder?
The lower, the slower.
Slower? Okay, yeah, it's opposite. So
it's
bigger
smaller
can...
in the engine.
Okay, bigger engine, bigger cc's, it can go faster.
Yeah, and that's not entirely true, but at the end of the day, there is no replacement for displacement.
Okay.
So
You want to start where you want with the displacement.
So you can go faster with a lower CC bike if you tune it correctly. But if you tune a higher CC bike, it's always going to go faster than a tuned lower CC bike.
Oh.
So, yeah, so there's things you can do, but at the end of the day,
What's this?
the Japanese
Solar?
found out that's a regulator rectifier. So your power that comes out of the generator runs through your regulator rectifier before it goes to the battery, and then powers the headlights and everything else.
And you feel like stuff in the 70s was just made better?
So much easier to work on, and they didn't overcomplicate it. I mean, you just, the way I've run this bike is straight off the generator directly to this coil. The wires are all easy to recognize. I have a book. They give you what's called a climber manual, and you can get one that basically tells you how to take it apart and put it back together.
And that's with all furniture. The same thing you said applied towards this vinyl / 8-track machine. It had like the schematics and stuff under here.
They want you to fix it.
Yeah.
You know? And
The same with my reel-to-reel. It was it's not a Kai, but a Tiac, and it had the schematics and everything. And I feel like the quality of the furniture and stuff was better, but I don't know. Maybe we're romanticizing a decade that we weren't even born in, you know?
I'm sure that's part of it, but at the same time, now in the industry that I work in and watching the way I'm putting in air conditioners that after 5 years,
Yeah.
you can't even get parts for.
And I hear people talking about refrigerators being like, or washing machines not being, and dryers not nearly as good. They're like
And then harder to repair.
harder to repair, like their lighter stuff not as durable. And
Both. I mean, you've got, if you had your grandma's refrigerator, the lead-lined case with the big door latch and all that, those things ran for 50 years. And now, refrigerator, I don't know.
It's like 10?
You think you get 10 to 15.
Yeah.
You know, depending on how you treat it. And it's the same thing with everything, like your furnace. Now you're getting 12 to 15. And the furnace in the house that I just sold is 30 years old this year.
where do you think we're going? Are we gonna like start to come back to the handcrafted, like more like user friendly, you could repair it yourself model, or no?
I'd like to say that I'm smart enough to have an opinion. But I don't pay attention to a lot of stuff on purpose because it just hurts your feelings. But from what I can tell, I would say a lot of people are really okay with letting things be disposable.
Yeah, people are okay with it because the immediate it's cheaper, so they're like in the short term
At
it's
this
fine.
point, it is. Yeah, you're starting to turn that way.
I
but
think
feel like
certain things.
I think we're starting to see, at least some people are starting to come around to the idea of fixing things.
Yeah,
And I think
I
that's
think
good.
you're right. Yeah, Yeah, so like people like you who like, they recognize the quality of older things, and then they get an older thing that's kind of broken, but then they're like, oh well, I'm confident that I can fix this, or I think because it can be fixed, like it's from that era. So
that's the biggest thing.
yeah, and so we get older things, and then
We try to fix it and apply that like culture into our culture.
Yeah.
I think that's what's happening, honestly, because like stuff gets out of.
Again, it depends on what we're talking about. Because like an HVAC system, probably not. You know.
Yeah.
An HVAC system now. I have done it or seen it done where we've gotten a new HVAC system and immediately gut it and replace it with things that we recognize and have simplified the process. So the components are all still the same basically.
Right.
And I guess it would be the same thing with a motorcycle, or it would be the same thing with a vehicle. A lot of the components are still the same, but it's no longer the wire goes from A to B, and it goes through this safety, and then it hits here, and then it creates this action. I think a lot of things now going through computers, circuit boards, and whatever, you get into the circuit board and you can't trace where it's going, what it's doing.
Because of the digital?
Because once it's
like
in
the
the
chips
board,
and stuff?
So a circuit board is still a connected sequence of things, right? But
Right.
you can't like follow a wire through a circuit board.
Correct.
Unless you know how the circuit board was built and like
Correct.
And they do have schematics and stuff for that, I guess. But
They do.
It's just
But even in what I see, you could have an in, right? So you have an input and an output. Your input could be at a certain voltage and the output is a different voltage, and you have nowhere in between on where to. So how do you tie them together and without removing the circuit board from the situation?
I'm sorry, say that again?
So if you've got an input and if we apply it to your home furnace, you've got an input at 24 volts, but then it controls a 110 output, say to turn the fan on.
110 volts.
So you've got the 24 that is the pilot that says it's controlling the sequence of events. But once the 24 comes into the board, 110 leaves the board, and there's no way for you to trace that or see what it's doing unless you remove the board from the situation. There is a way I could take 24 volts, take 110 volts, and make those two things talk to each other, but it would require skipping the board as a whole.
Okay. And
so
that's different to the stuff that you would find in older tech? In
So
what
older
way?
tech- so older tech, they didn't have circuit boards. The wires had to go through and actually hit
other things. Oh, okay. They were starting to have circuit boards around there, I think. So
Sure.
it just wasn't as implemented.
Circuit boards are just smaller versions of the technology that we had in the past. If I understand them correctly, they
Yes.
can be more sophisticated because we can fit a lot more stuff in a small space.
Oh, okay.
That's what they talk about, like the old computers being the size of a room.
Oh, because
Right.
they each component was
There was
attached.
so
It wasn't
much-
like consolidated
Well, it
on
was-
a board.
I'm talking about things that I'm not a professional in. So,
Right, I am too.
It was all mechanical when the first computers were made. And so they needed like gears for the things to go through, and like you've seen Imitation Game, right? That's like an early computer that he invented to decode.
Yeah.
But if you watch the movie, it is just a bunch of like spinning things,
Correct.
hitting with electricity going through it, and it's anyway. I think we're doing the same thing with circuit boards, anyways.
No,
Is there ever any use to? Are we going to go back to that more mechanical mode, or no? It's not efficient enough. Is there any benefit that's lost there? Because we're talking about going back to methods of the past. Is that just a relic of those type of machinery? I don't know.
I think it's easy for us to romanticize it being that we weren't there,
Yeah.
obviously, because we don't know. I'm sure it was frustrating when your motorcycle didn't work, or I'm sure it was frustrating when this didn't work, and possibly you didn't have the know-how to fix either of those things,
Exactly.
so you had to hire someone to do it. So how much different is it now for someone to do the same thing that now has a circuit board in it?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, we always talk.
It's the
Sorry.
want. I think it's just the want to fix it is what was lost. Because at this point, like you're saying, the convenience factor is there, dude.
People wanted to fix it more so because they didn't have the internet to distract them from the few appliances of entertainment that they had.
And they were like, it's either I fix it
Or I don't have this. Yeah.
So
It makes
instead
sense.
of it being, I'll throw this away and get another one.
Which goes along with like the opposite of kind of short-term consumerism, which we see more prevalent in our day.
Right.
Well, yeah, but you think about it too. Like, if I bought a tool that I could fix, like I can figure it out, right?
But
Like
it's investment to learn how to do it.
So it takes time, right, and research. But then if I'm gonna buy the specific part for like a rigid drill or something like that, and do the work to figure out how, like, I think the work to figure out how to fix something is cheaper sorry, I'm getting off. If I'm gonna buy the part, it might be more expensive than just buying a new drill these days, because we can make things for so cheap.
Yeah.
Because they are so cheap, but then because they're so cheap, it's not worth fixing. So you just throw it away.
It's a
And that is
conundrum.
true.
Yeah, I see that.
I've seen that in certain parts that I fix. I've actually been able to, instead of ordering a rebuild kit for something I'm working on, it is cheaper and faster.
Just buy the
get
part.
another one.
Yeah, it's
And
true.
Because although it is an option, they do try to, I think, keep you away from doing that. And whether it's because of money.
Where would the money be like motivated in that instance to like make it cheaper for the part or whatever? I don't
Cheaper
get
to buy
that.
the whole thing instead of the parts?
Yeah, like they're getting more money from the purchases,
I mean,
but
it's
like
more expensive to get the whole thing, which is, I imagine, why they would rather put the whole thing together and then sell it to you.
okay.
And then you have a rebuild kit, so they take pieces of the component, package it, and then they have to sell that individually or as a kit.
And there might be businesses where they could like refurbish parts and
they
put
do.
that into what they sell as the whole.
Yeah.
And you can buy refurbished parts, definitely.
Okay.
And like a lot of large compressors and stuff, you can get, there's whole shops that'll tear them apart and put them back together, and electric motors, stuff like
So
that.
when you say compressor in the audio world, we think of like compressors, audio, squashing the waveform. You're talking about like air compressors.
Air compressor, refrigerant compressor.
So like, what do compressors?
Liquid dynamic.
Well, you can't compress a liquid.
What?
You cannot compress a liquid. That's how hydraulics work.
You can't compress a liquid?
But you can't compress it because there's more space between the molecules.
You can compress a gas, you cannot compress a liquid.
Okay. Because
So,
there's not enough room.
So yeah. Well, ice, the solid, is less dense
Wait.
than water.
Well, tell me.
But I never thought about if you could compress like a liquid or not. Any
Tell
liquid?
me why then? Because I think we've had this talk before, and I've been.
Well, it's how hydraulics work, right? Hydraulics are literally just a liquid you're pumping into a cylinder to expand, right?
Yeah.
Like if you're talking about a bucket arm or something like
Sure.
that.
Yeah.
It's just
Or like
pushing
a
that.
storm door. The black thing on a storm door is a hydraulic.
That's pneumatic.
Dang. Okay. Never mind. Okay.
And the reason that works is because air can be compressed. So on your storm door, you've got that cam. So when it pulls out, it sucks air into the big tube,
Okay.
right? And then there's a plunger. And then as you let it go, it does have that return. It wants to return. And as it comes back, it'll compress that air, but then eventually bounce. So when that door comes back, it bounces and then continues to pull down. It's when it's now
Compressing.
it's just releasing the air back out of it.
Oh, hence the hiss.
But yeah, if it had been a liquid, you would pull that out, and then if it tried to pull back, it wouldn't move. If it was full of liquid, it doesn't
wouldn't-
matter what you're pulling back on it, it won't
just
move.
won't.
Oh, that's so like, you know, when you inject like needles, like with injections like, or shots or whatever, the same mechanism. Wait, so what is hydraulics exactly?
So hydraulics is generally an oil that they'll use to move different things. A lot of times, I think the easiest way to think about it is in construction equipment.
Yeah.
You know, like if you've got like a backhoe, that whole arm that moves back and forth and it has those big pistons on it, it's all articulated by hydraulics. So there's just a compressor that moves this oil. I guess not a compressor, but a pump that moves the oil. And as you operate the levers, it allows the oil to go one way or the other to either add oil to it in order to extend it, or removes oil from it in order to bring it back.
Man, you're making me want to research a lot of stuff when I get home, dude. That's awesome. It's a wealth of information. Thank you
So
for
yeah,
for sure. I'm thinking like honestly, like I was thinking at first, just like putting this as part of like clipping it into like a history of 8-track or something. But now I'm thinking like this might be a cool like candid like podcast episode in a way, just that conversation.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because I have my music channel and my wife and I
okay
are
with that.
starting like a podcast where we interview people, but it doesn't even have to be a formal like sit down. Like that conversation, if people are interested in people casually talking to each other with mics and cameras, sitting down on couches, what's the difference between that and like an iPhone conversation here? You know what I'm saying? Don't you think that could have been like a
The attention that it needs to have in order to continue.
well, it's finding. Well, and I
We would
think
just be recording our conversations at a certain point, and then people would be like, well, they're talking about the same stuff.
Yeah, but dude, I'm just saying, like, people like that apparently, especially in the time of censorship, in the time of everybody getting offended, if you could just listen to people talk unfiltered, that's refreshing. So as easy as it is, it's like we've been given this opportunity with the limitations and toxicity that we've seen kind of grow in the culture. So it's like a blessing and a curse in that way.
And I feel like that like instinct to start a podcast these days is just a factor of feeling like there's value in the conversations.
There is.
And that's kind of the idea of the payphone, right?
It is, yeah.
So, yeah.
Payphone, what do you mean?
Yeah. Just the, like, paying for a conversation. Like, there's
You have
worth
to have
in the
something to say,
conversation.
right? If you're gonna give them a dime
Yeah.
in order to talk to someone, you have to
Yeah.
You're
And
not
that's
just picking up a payphone to just say, hey, what's going on?
exactly. Yeah.
And I think that was a big thing. And that ties into that book I was reading, that Amusing Ourselves to Death. It talks about the way that the
If it's too cheap, you don't value it. If it's too cheap, you don't value it. But if you
And this book I recently read, and I really wish I really hope I'm not butchering the idea, but from what I gathered, it was like the idea that once the television came around, it started really with the telegram, and then you just started sharing pieces of information. Mm-hmm. And you know of a lot of things, but not about a lot of things, right? And those pieces of information don't actually add up to much, right? But I think the first telegram was between like Boston and New York, something like that.
do you know what year it was? Like telegram?
can't-
When did
I'm not sure when that is.
I'm curious what the like range of when it started and was obsolete was.
No, I'm not sure on that.
But that
I
was
know-
like telegram was pre-radio?
Yes.
So the first telegram was May 24, 1844. According to phi.edu, whatever the heck that is.
But,
Okay.
Yeah, so shortly after the telegram was actually set up between these two cities,
Wait, telegraph or telegram?
wire
Telegram.
between the two cities to transport Morse code.
Telegraph.
Yeah.
Because isn't a telegram like a dude on a horse with a piece of paper saying something?
Yes, like what am I thinking? The Pony Express?
Yeah.
I believe so.
Is that really the distinction? They're so close. Okay.
But keep talking.
Anyways, yeah.
But yeah, between these two cities, like one of the first pieces of information that really got shared back and forth was like in New York, they got a telegraph that, Boston's on fire.
Oh, the Boston. Yeah. I
And
heard
they're like,
that.
okay. And then people were interested to hear it, right? Because that is something, and to this day, if we were like, oh, Grand Rapids is on fire, like you would like to know that.
Yeah.
But what does that change about your day?
Yeah.
You're not there, and
Well, it might change something if I live there and my family's there.
well, no, if you're in New York and you find out Boston's on
gotcha.
fire,
I got
and
it.
especially at the time, it is possible that you
Had relatives,
you were
but not
just
likely.
if you're traveling, yes, and it is possible that you may have relatives there, yes. But I think at the time, people didn't move around nearly as much. So I think you were dealing with basically just an abstract idea.
Oh no!
It's on fire. And like, well, I gotta go to work.
yeah.
So
They're not letting me call off, so I better get off.
So-
Yeah, that's true.
and then how that changed with television and how it turned into they're sharing with you. And the idea that I've always expressed, that I don't believe that the world was meant to be so small, and I shouldn't know what's going on halfway across the world.
It becomes
And
harmful.
it shouldn't impact what I'm doing here,
Right.
right? But
It becomes a manipulation tactic, though.
and it can. I mean, it's in the way the news operates, and it's just as long as you understand that it is just entertainment, right? That gives you a leg up on the idea.
Right.
If you don't let it actually control the way you think about things,
Like news you're talking about?
Yeah.
Okay.
As long as you understand
You're not
it.
looking at it so much as like
Put it in
a source of
what
priorities in my life.
Correct.
It's just like entertainment.
It
Like
is
information to, yeah. What you're talking about, do you know much about Stoicism, Adam?
Yeah, I've read some about it. I try to read a lot about
A lot.
as many different schools of thought as possible, and just draw from what I think. Once you commit to one, you shut yourself off to the others. But yeah, I've read Stoicism.
Yeah, I recommend maybe peeking back. Ryan Holiday, he's a modern proponent of the philosophy, but basically it's just the idea of there's two things in life you can control, or there's two groups of categories. Things you can control, things you can't. And there's no point in putting any more resources, energy, time, whatever, in the stuff that you can't control.
Mm-hmm.
But so much of what we see nowadays, I think, we try to like flare up emotions and like the lower frequency, like our fear and stuff, to make us react in a way that really, it's talking about things that we can't control anyway, so we shouldn't let it get that reaction out of us.
But the thing is that I think on a level, like a certain level, we do want that. As like a base instinct, we kind of want that feeling, because if we're living in a little village community and we hear about a threat coming in, like we want to know about it, and then we want to tell everybody else about it, so they want to hear about it.
So it's in our biology.
I think it's kind of a hijacking of that instinct.
But the fact that the turn of the century made it go from the telegram, one like message from one city to the other, to everybody having connection to everybody else.
Right. And so I think
it creates this hysteria that maybe psychologically we're not built for that,
because it's constant too.
They do say like gossip was important back, if you're talking about when we were clannish. Gossip was important. People talking about other people is how you found out like what's going on, right?
Yeah.
And it was kind of like the news, right? And yeah, not to try to put anybody in that category, but basically my wife talked about it and found out that she was like, yeah, women would gossip in order to talk about who's dealing with what.
As a way to kind of help.
Yeah, like while men are off doing whatever at the time, the women were back. They're like, hey, did you hear this? And yeah, it was a way to pass time for one, but for two, it was a good way to share information because they didn't have any other way to find things out. And
yeah, word of mouth. It's the
it's the only way for
we call it. I don't know why we call it gossip technically now, but what
I think gossip is where it's getting in the kind of mudslinging, like kind of bringing down people's reputation.
Well, if it gets too personal, right? Sure. But even at the time, if you would find out something deeply personal, that did be like, hey, that guy's messed up.
Yeah, even if it's,
like, you know what I mean? Like,
hey, what would you define gossip as? That's a good question.
Yeah, that's there's a lot there.
Yeah.
Because if everybody's got a peek, a window into everybody's life, or at least what they think is their life,
well, see, again,
it's like
I think
we're warping our reality.
I think this is, again, the hijacking of these natural systems that we have, and rather than, I mean, okay, when you see it, I think you know it. Like when you have a certain conversation, you feel a certain way.
But when you see it, you know it is a really tough argument, dude.
Yeah, because sensitivity. See, I love your sentiment, and I think it's true. Oftentimes, first instinct, we kind of know if something's shady or not.
That's what I mean. To actively avoid that statement right there. That exact statement is what they use to try.
You can justify a lot with it.
Well, they wanted to make pornography illegal, and when it went to court, they said define pornography, and one of the powers that be, this was years ago,
like 80s or something.
But like one of the powers that be at the time said, "I'll know it when I see it," and that's a tough argument.
Yeah, because then it makes everybody the individual judge, and at that point, it's anything.
And I worked very hard not to make sure I'm the judge of anything in that.
Yeah, but the foundation of that for me, I don't know what that guy was like. Sure. Politicians are slimy, and again, when we get on a political level, we're trying to define things on a really broad. We're trying to assign definitions. Right, but I'm a firm believer in the human conscience.
Sure.
I think that you can break it down through practicing, but I think that you can also build it up through practicing and through an awareness of kind of your gut feeling about things.
Yeah, you get that sensitivity. You
become more sensitive. And so through that process, you come to understand what is right and what is wrong.
Yeah.
And one, like, I don't disagree with you,
it doesn't work on a big level.
Yeah, I wanted to avoid trying to make a definition with that statement because
it could be like
so much nuance.
That's true.
So
that's a good point. But I do think too that that's kind of a failing of our like Western heritage is to put definitions on things.
Yeah, it's useful. That's philosophy. No, because if we are not,
it's also dangerous.
No, I don't think so. Because if my justice is your injustice, then like if we're using the word justice, we're not really having the same conversation. Defining the most basic definitions of words is really important.
It's coming to an understanding, but
and sometimes I think people assume they know what a person's means when they say certain words,
and that's
especially triggering words or high.
That's what I mean with the danger of definition, because they hold strongly to a definition, And so when you say a word that they have a different definition for,
But we have
rather
to
than
have
coming to
some-
an understanding,
Yeah.
they hold so tightly to the definition rather than, okay, well, that's crazy. Maybe he means something else.
But the definition's a starting point, I think.
Yeah, so that's what I don't think I think it has its place.
It
I'm
shouldn't
just saying
be
it's
so
kind
like
of,
orthodox. Like
yeah, it's kind of dangerous
written
to.
in stone.
Well, I think this goes back to what you're basically describing is at the end of the day, you actually have to have a conversation about it.
Yeah.
You can't just walk up and just say something and then move on, because then that person's just receiving a tidbit and they're like, yeah. You're like,
Which is exactly, I've heard this argued about Twitter or X, that like it's literally the way it's developed, like a lot of, it can't possibly be like a betterment for society, because the way it's developed or engineered is to foster only those types of interactions.
it's basically you're only getting headlines.
Yeah. And it's like, people aren't really like,
and you have to have two ways. Yeah, you can't just have this and then all the small text below it. There's no conversation.
Yeah.
You're responding, but that's not a conversation. There has to be a give and a take. And so at the end of the day, it's important to make sure if you are going to say something like that, you are taking the time to follow it up with an actual dialogue.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because
I appreciate you pushing back on me with.
Because the definition can mean something else to somebody else. I don't think it's important that everyone has to agree on what the definition is. Much like,
as long as we know what somebody like,
It's
we
intent.
could at least entertain somebody's idea without, accepting that it's true, right?
Yeah.
That's the idea of a steel man.
But it takes confidence in your own position and your sense, in your ability to detect truth, to be able to do that. And that puts you in a vulnerable position. Because I think more than a lot of us would like to admit, we don't know shiz.
Yeah.
That's what I was just about to say. I think more than anything else, you have to be able to be willing to accept that you don't know something.
Yes.
And I hope that I don't put out there because I say things confidently, and people just accept it.
Yeah, right.
And I'm like, I could be wrong.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
And like
Oh,
you were saying
maybe I
with
didn't
using
think about
this,
that.
like it's fine, but I could be wrong.
You
and
gotta
I'm okay.
try something, though.
But yeah, like as long as I've got a stance. Like,
But if you're
That's where
wrong
you start.
and you're willing to accept that,
Yes.
rather than hold on to the pride, that's the quickest way to learn. Is to make a choice, commit to something, but be willing to accept it may be wrong and analyze and go forward.
correct.
Don't you
Yes.
think?
I think so. Yeah.
So many people have a hard time doing that, though, because we have that infinite interconnectedness nowadays. The judgment along with that is so intense that people don't want to be
You can be very
ostracized, because more than just like biologically being an outcast, it's like a real danger economically, like for you to be able to provide for your family in so many dimensions. It's like survival. So like it's a big risk to put your neck out there to, and
That's another basic, like what we were talking about with gossip. The thing with gossip was to see if there was a danger in the village, and then if we needed to take action to expel the danger. And so that's the danger of being ostracized from the community has helped humanity survive. But now, again,
the community's the world.
it's too big, and we can't.
When I feel like a lot of the negativity that now comes with having the world as your community is the fact that I think a lot of those people just have something poor to say because they feel like that's their way of exercising control. Maybe feeling the weight. I've always described it as feeling the weight of your hand, right? Because you've got no other way to get people to recognize you, notice you, whatever. And saying, hey, nice. You're not getting a lot of attention with that, right? But if you come after somebody,
You're gonna get attention.
and
For people that were deprived of that from their childhood, maybe that's them fulfilling a need consciously.
or just in general, if you feel like you're not being seen, an easy way to be seen is to really just start poking at somebody and see if you can get something
And
up.
people do that nowadays with social media. A lot of the videos that will get clicks are negative,
Again,
thumbnails.
with the hijacking of our instincts.
Yeah,
Because it's survival to focus on is something
But do
going
you
to
think
be a
it's
threat.
Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off.
But I think the antidote to that and what we need to learn how to do is learn, again, with this conscience thing. I think that's huge. Learning when it's talking to you, and then using that to apply it to the things of the world to see, is this actually a threat, or can I safely ignore it and go on with my life? And, tend to the community that you interact with, at arm's reach, so to speak.
People don't like that idea because you can't have that. You can't have that without God. Because I don't think you can.
Okay.
Because that spirit that's like you're in tune to is the spirit of God, which is the judge. Because you can't have good without evil. Yeah. Or like if there's no God, there's no good or evil. There has to be a judge.
Yeah,
like,
but again,
otherwise everybody is the judge and or society is the collective judge, and that's what we see. The society is the collective judge, and some things just aren't politically correct.
Sure.
And you'll be ostracized for it. But if the judge truly is that spirit,
it's
that's
a higher. But so AA necessitates fidelity to a higher power, but they don't define what that higher power needs
God.
to be.
Yeah.
So you would call it God. Okay.
No.
But so here we go, right?
God.
If let's just assume God is real, okay? Now God interacts in some way with humanity because what we're talking about is some sort of connection to that higher power, right? It needs to exist in a way that no matter what we define it as, it interacts with us in a consistent way.
Yeah, it would have to.
So when I say conscience, I think that is the connection to the higher power, regardless of what you call it. If you call the higher power God, it is still
the same thing.
It's still
Labels,
that overreaching
right?
power that fuels the universe, right? Whether you call it the universe, or you call it source, or you call it God. It's interacting with us in the same way. So I think that it's more accurate and safer to talk about the conscience because that's kind of the boots on the ground interaction with demon. The more that we become sensitive to that, the more we become in line with the powers
sensitive
of the universe.
What?
And sensitive to that feeling, sensitive to the consciousness. Conscience. Yeah, okay. I don't know. I'm getting messed up with consciousness.
Consciousness and conscience.
But anyway, the more in line with that we are, I think, rather than arguing over the definition or the name of this interaction, all humans have it. So even atheists, even though they don't believe in a God, they interact with this like universal power that fuels life. So anyway, that's just why I use that. And I think that is, regardless of your beliefs, aligning yourself with God, which is truth. It's like truth, capital T, truth, embodying all of the good, all of the survival, all of the long-term benefit for humanity.
When I think something we're seeing now more than ever is with how, and I know there's a lot of people that aren't secure financially or whatever the case may be, but the fact that we don't have to think as much about a bomb falling on our head, where's your next meal coming from, stuff like that, you do start to turn towards, you're not worried about the external, you start more to turn towards yourself and worry about the way the world sees you.
Yeah.
When even so far as, 50, 60 years ago, when there was a war on, I guess more than that at this point, isn't it? But when there was a war on, they're like, you're just helping the collective at this point.
Yeah.
Like, we don't care the way you see yourself at this point. You're helping us. And whether or not that's right or wrong, obviously is not an easy thing to answer. But I think you can get too far concerned on the way that people look at you, right? And then trying to decide, because like you're saying, everyone is deciding what's good, what's bad for themselves. But if you can't, there are a few held beliefs that everyone can agree on. And then the ones you hear about, of course, are the ones that are the most farthest one way or the other.
Yeah.
And that's one thing I try to do is I just try to worry less about right and wrong as far as everything else goes. But just, what can I do collectively that's right?
Yeah.
And it's just, at a certain point, you're only going to change so many minds. And like you said, you got to have your community within arm's reach, and those are the people that you can impact. And focus on those people, and then you can only hope that community will eventually reach out to the next. But if it doesn't, I'm okay with that too. I'm taking care of my people.
Right.
And the nice thing about that is that no community is fully isolated.
Yeah.
You can't be isolated. Yeah.
Right. So you take care of your community, and if everybody's doing that, all of our communities are taken care of.
Correct.
It's just so hard not to have what we were talking about, the penny pinching fear that keeps us from kind of not focusing so much on just like how this individual interaction benefits me. Because if you're just looking at that, yeah, maybe serving, like helping you move or helping like give a poor person some money or whatever isn't gonna be in your best interest. But as the community as a whole, it will be. Why is that? It seems obvious, but why is valuing the community and what benefits it as a whole more important than focusing on your own preferences and
sorry.
wants and
You go
needs?
ahead.
I mean,
I just have a problem with the question, but we could go with that.
I would say,
Go ahead.
just to me, because I spend a lot of time worrying less about what's going to make me money and more what about what is right.
Yeah.
And I think the issue a lot of people have is a lot of people don't like the idea, but like at the end of the day, I'm not anybody. I'm not irreplaceable. I'm not a world changer. I'm a guy just doing my thing.
Wearing his
I like
suspenders.
Yeah.
He knows what he's like. He's convinced me to wear the suspenders.
At the end of the day, I'm not changing the world, and I don't hold any belief that I may do that. So at the end
But your
of the day,
suspenders will.
they could.
They'll hold the belief.
They're gonna hold.
Sorry,
They're holding me up. But yeah, it's just I worry less about what's gonna happen financially. Like when we sold our house. Well, not this one, but when we sold our house and moved up here from Toledo, my neighbor knew a guy, buddy of his, that they had lost 90-some% of their belongings to an apartment fire. And I said, look, I'm trying to get out of here, right? I'm trying to move. What do you approve for? What can we do? I made enough money off that house to get us up here and get us squared away and get us started here without worrying about if we went to market, what we would have made.
Sorry, do you mind just tilting it a little bit that way? It'll just help. Yeah.
Okay.
It's like a slight difference, but that will help the audio pick up better.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's just the idea that I didn't try to look at that monetarily. I tried to look at that as this guy obviously needs a place to live. What can I do in order to help him do that? And that's something else I'm trying to teach my kids. And if you have the ability to help, you help. It doesn't matter what the situation is. It doesn't matter if it is a homeless guy flying a flag on the corner. What's he going to do with that money? You don't know. But you got the ability to help. And at the very end of the day, I think you can actually argue that it's better that you gave it to him than you did.
So what's your religious beliefs? Because me as a Christian, that's what Christ would teach us to do.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't been in church in a while. I was raised Lutheran. Spent a lot of time outside of the church. I did start going back again shortly before deer season. And then Sunday was the only day I was able to hunt. And there is a good argument you don't have to go to church to be a part of the church, right? But that's another thing that I haven't spent a lot of time thinking about. But
Like
religion.
Religion. Yeah.
But I did realize that like my biggest issue with the church I had growing up,
Were your parents pretty active?
not terribly, but I think just the issue I had with Christians growing up was the way they were doing it was not the way that Jesus would want you to do it.
Like in what way?
Well, just the Christians you hear about on TV and stuff like that, the ones that are
Like Joel
put other
Osteen,
people down.
like-
Yeah. Well, yeah.
I don't mean to
obviously.
make names, but yeah. That's
No,
like,
but the televangelists are an easy one to look at because that is literally not what Jesus told you to do. You know what I mean? And it was so many things, like the amount of judgment from Christians to non-Christians or Christians to other Christians or anything of that nature. I mean, none of that. It's so simple as love thy neighbor. So I did eventually realize that I wasn't mad at the church. I was just mad at the way that people were using the word.
Yeah. Which wasn't.
And they weren't using it in a way to help, a rising tide raises all ships.
Yeah.
But instead they're like, no, you don't. Like, but why would you do that?
Well, that's why in the scriptures it says in the last day that there'll be many who, or I forgot how it's worded. There's many who are going to say, Lord, Lord, like, let us into the gates. But like, he'll respond,
say,
you know me not. Basically, like they said, these people that profess to be Christians but aren't like really, truly abiding by his spirit. It's like, doesn't matter what label you put on it, it's not actually that spirit.
Yeah, and I think that's... So yeah, I think I did come back to it when I started reading again. After I quit drinking, I started reading again a lot. I did.
So quitting drinking is what spurred reading?
I was always a very big reader, but you can't read a book drunk.
You don't think so?
I've tried.
Why? A lot of writers are drunk.
You can write.
Bukowski said, "Write drunk, edit sober."
Yeah,
And I
you
think it was
can't
Bukowski.
comprehend it. You can tell a story drunk,
Huh.
but I couldn't. And also, I was drinking to excess. I was
So like,
due back at 5:30.
yeah. So like,
Took my watch off. It hurts not to have it. Thank you, Mr. Watchman. I gotta get that sweet tan line.
To preserve that little bit of the coffin.
Yeah, right.
wait, what?
My coffin tattoo tucks underneath my watch. So we're just saving that much of the ink.
I think we have the same ring. These things are the best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I like them.
So, what did we? I'm trying to think.
Where did it end?
So he was asking the question,
Okay, you were talking about.
religion.
Okay, yeah, religion. Are you were saying something that made me. I was like, that's basically what Christ taught us to do, which is like, if you can help.
If you have the means to help.
And then
should
you
help.
said that's. I asked what your religious beliefs are, and
Yeah, basically, grew up in the church, and I didn't have much of a problem with it.
what church?
The Lutheran church.
Okay.
Christianity.
Yeah, and grew up in the Lutheran church, and I did like going to church, but then when I got old enough to start looking around and paying attention to it, I didn't like the way that a lot of people used Christ to put other people down. The way they used him in order to elevate themselves as a platform of justice or
Whatever. That's
whatever they
priestcraft.
want.
Yeah.
Right. So when I quit drinking and started reading again, I read a lot of philosophy, and I tried to just get back into thinking about different things, and it brought me back to the idea that, as you read the Bible and you read all the good works that they tell you should be doing, and all the things that God did and Jesus did, is not the way that a lot of people use Christianity, right? They use it as a way,
Like an excuse. I'm good.
And that goes back to like what we were talking about. It's important to kind of like define your definitions, but also be willing to understand other people's definitions are different, and at least entertain and like try to understand and have
absolutely.
that conversation. Because at that point, you're going to understand: is my Christianity your Christianity?
Yeah.
Because that's important.
Right.
If we know in the scriptures it says like there's going to be many who try to enter the gate and say, "Lord, Lord," I forgot how they worded it, but he'll say, "You know me not." You know, and that's basically that.
Yeah.
So I did, and I definitely liked I liked going to church. I liked the community, I like having people around you that all are trying also to be good people. And I think that's a hard thing too, is you have to find the community that's actually trying to be good people.
Yeah.
No one institution has a monopoly on that.
Do you go
Correct.
to church now?
I haven't gone in some time. We've been spending a lot of time moving. That's been occupying my time.
Yeah.
In between that and
I've always been interested because people say if you like stand more here, you'll be in the shot. I think if you're interested.
Am I just like dancing in and out of it?
You're the edge. I'll show you. I'll tell you where the edge is.
why don't you stand still?
The edge is like your back is touching it. If you move, your back is touching the frame there. Yeah.
Okay, so I can lean on the frame.
Your ear's sunburned. Your ear's sunburned. I think you've deserved it.
Is it sunburned?
It is very
Oh
bad.
no! I was like standing like this for a while.
Sorry, bro. You could have moved to the edge.
I thought you were trying to listen.
it was helping. I'm not gonna lie, that wasn't useful.
What was my question? I was just wondering, like,
I'll stand over here.
Well, what were you saying about the problem?
Yeah, I just wanted
what was the
to,
problem?
I just wanted to point out that
the question probably wasn't even like
it probably wasn't
So
recorded.
yeah, maybe just ask what you wanted to ask
Oh, okay.
in that case, because I think it was cut off.
I don't remember exactly what the question was at this point anyway, but it just sounded like you were asking about how you avoid being selfish and instead do more for the community, right? But I think it's important to remember that we need to take care of ourselves, but we need to do that in a way that also builds the community. So the things that we do that's good for us, it has to be good for our family, good for society, and then kind of follow us. These are Jordan Peterson's ideas, right? Kind of continue down the end goal, which is what he would say the highest good that you can imagine.
So people living by their truth, it's like,
it's got to do good. It's got to like build life and facilitate survival.
yeah,
basically.
That brings a point that I wanted to Jessica and I, when we had a conversation with your dad last night, this is something that I brought up, and I want to know what you guys think of this. So basically,
And then we should go.
Yeah.
We need to go.
So in chemistry,
No.
do you know much about chemistry?
That's a little.
Just the basic.
That's a little-
Yeah. So like you know the noble gases, basically they have their valence shell full of electrons, and because of that they're stable.
Correct.
Whereas the other elements, like on the periodic table, they are missing 2 or like have 2 extra, so they'll give their electrons away to be an ion. Like sodium, it's a plus charge because it has
They
one.
trade.
Yeah, it gives it away. Or chlorine is a negative because it has
An extra space.
7 out of the 8 full, so
Right.
it wants to bind with sodium to create a more stable bond. It's like a pseudo noble gas. The way that I look at my depression, which I've dealt with, kind of an ever looming
Constant.
gloom, kind
Sure.
of.
Sorry.
And it goes in waves how much it manifests, but it's definitely worsened when I focus too much on myself. You hear people say, go and serve, do charity, and get outside of yourself, and that's a really good way to like get out of depression, and I think it's true. It's not easy to do.
Correct.
When you're in that state, I look at it kind of like, again, the chemistry. If I am a sodium ion, and I'm like, I have 1 extra electron on my valence shell, and I want to get rid of it so my other shell's just full. If I'm just focusing on myself, really, I am imperfect. I'm not like a noble gas. Like I'm screwed up, and like that's something maybe to be depressed about. But what is that going to do compared to if I go and serve other people? If I see, oh, chlorine, he wants electron, I need to get rid of mine anyways. I go serve him or her. There's this bond made that like I've served them, but that's also fulfilled me.
I think there's 2 things to that I can comment on. One being, yes, if you are focusing on yourself, I've read a lot about rumination lately. And I think
Exactly.
we talked about rumination lately. Where,
I get in these modes where I just like, ruminate.
Yeah. And I think, it's not good for anybody. But I feel like I've tried, and I don't know how successful I've been. I feel like I've been at least a little bit successful in the idea that it goes back to the idea that who am I?
Right.
Who's asking me to be a perfect person?
Yeah.
You're not irreplaceable. You're not, and some of these things sound like a bummer, right? Like, it sounds like you're really being down on yourself, but at the same time, don't put it on yourself.
Yeah.
Like, don't ask that of yourself.
Uh-huh.
Just allow yourself to just be a guy.
Right.
Just doing what you're trying to do. Like,
That's what I like about the doctrine of Christianity. It's at the same time putting an ideal that you can follow and try to embody, but then while it's saying, hey, this is the best you can be, but it's okay for you to be where you are as you're progressing towards what you want to be.
Yeah, that could only exist though if there was the Savior though, because it's through
Right,
Him that
yeah.
that's the case.
Right.
Because it's through Him that we don't have to be perfect. We can put our sins upon Him. I think that's beautiful. You accept that you're not who you, but
I found it to be incredibly freeing.
yeah.
And I think another thing, existentialism is another thing where it's like, same thing, where it's like, a lot of people look at it as a bummer, but if you realize that you're just kind of floating around, you're space dust, man, and we're all just space dust.
Yeah.
Like, it sounds like hippy-dippy stuff, but it's like, accept the fact that this is where you're at, and you know what, just ride the wave, man. Like,
Do you know
your thing.
in Genesis it says, from the dust thou art created, to the dust you will return? I think of people saying we're stardust. It's kind of biblical.
Well, it's literally true.
Yeah,
because
it is.
This earth, right?
The materials CHON, carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, make up
Everything.
94% of every organic material.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Anyway, that just goes down to like stars, nebula, like the building of worlds and stuff. It's all elements, and if we are made up of the elements of this world, then it's literally true that we are stardust. So anyway, I just
Oh,
No.
sorry.
I think that's a good place
bit
to
of a
end.
tangent.
We're just stardust. Who am I?
At the end of your day, just, there's a good poem, The Irreplaceable Man. And I'm not going to quote it because I'm going to do a terrible job.
No, do your best. Do your best.
Well, let's.
Yeah, look it up. Look it up, and then give it to him. So we want to hear
You want
Adam's
Adam to
voice.
read it?
Yeah.
Okay.
That'd be a
And
good
then
way
you
to
can
end
do
it.
like a voiceover or something.
Is there anything that like you want to shout out business, or you have like anything or say besides this? Just while you have the chance. What, the way I said that?
No, just the way he said
I don't have anything to promote, man. Like, it's just,
Who am I?
who am I? Like, just be cool, dude.
Shout out to just being cool.
You got old motorcycles.
Yeah.
I want them. That's right. Yeah, sometime when you're feeling important, sometime when your ego's in bloom, sometime when you take it for granted, you're the best qualified in the room. Sometime when you feel that your going would leave an unfillable hole, just follow these simple instructions and see how they humble your soul. Take a bucket and fill it with water, put your hand in it up to the wrist, pull it out, and the hole that's remaining is a measure of how much you'll be missed. You can splash all you wish when you enter, you may stir up the water galore, but stop and you'll find that in no time, it looks quite the same as before. The moral of this quaint example is to do just the best that you can. Proud of yourself, but remember, there's no indispensable man.
Beautiful. Thank you, Adam. It's been a pleasure, man.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And this is just a normal, like,
Your stickers. If you're having fun, you're doing it right.
Yeah, see, there's my Carter Mondale.
oh yeah, there you go.
What's that?
Jimmy Carter's presidential campaign.
Cool. Yeah. I support him.